Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar to describe the New Mexico statewide water loss control training program that we're going to be kicking off. Next slide, please. I just want to go over a couple of simple logistics. If you're listening to the webinar as well as logged on and watching it on your computer, you'll notice a control panel to the right of your screen. In that control panel, you'll see a chat box. It'll be down towards the bottom of your screen, the bottom of your control panel. At any time during the webinar, feel free to type in questions that you have about anything we're covering or the water loss control program. We'll hold the questions to the end and answer them then, but feel free to type them in as you go along. If you're just listening on the phone and you're not connected via your computer to the webinar, you can email questions to J.R. Markham, and that's spelled J-R-M-A-R-K-H-A-M @gmail.com. And one more time, that's J-R-M-A-R-K-H-A-M @gmail.com. So if you're not able to access the webinar via the computer go-to, you can email us questions. If you do not have the computer up, you can also download the presentation and use the paper version that was sent along with your registration and just follow along. And we're glad to have you all here today. So next slide, please. Today's webcast will cover a couple of different things. We'll introduce the team who's putting on this program, give you a little bit of background, talk about the program content, talk about the program logistics and the training program, and then cover some next steps. And again, just a reminder, if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them in the chat box. Next slide, please. The training program team consists of 3 organizations. It's the New Mexico Environment Department who's sponsoring the training. And then the training team is the Southwest Environmental Finance Center at the University of New Mexico and Cavanaugh Solutions out of North Carolina. This is Heather Himmelberger. I'm the director of the Southwest Environmental Finance Center. You might have seen us in other venues doing technical assistance with asset management or water loss. We've done quite a bit of work both within New Mexico and outside New Mexico on managerial, financial, and technical capacity development for small water systems. And then I'd like James to introduce himself. James Markham is here with me. He's also with the Southwest Environmental Finance Center. He'll be helping with the training, and he's also coordinating the webinar today.
Nice to be here.
I'm going to turn it over to Will from Cavanaugh. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Will.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Will Jernigan with Cavanaugh. It's great to be here. We are excited to be teaming with the Environmental Finance Center and the New Mexico Environment Department to be delivering this training. Our company is a specialty firm that deals in water loss management, and so again, excited to be part of this training program. We've got a lot of great things in store and looking forward to it very much. I'm going to now turn to the folks from the New Mexico Environment Department, ask them to introduce themselves and speak to the next segment of today's webinar.
Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Shurin. I'm the Sustainable Water Infrastructure Group Manager with the Drinking Water Bureau at the Environment Department, and I'm here with Peter Nathanson.
Hi folks, this is Peter, and I manage the technical services team within the Sustainable Water Infrastructure Group, and my office is located in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Great. Thank you for attending and joining the introduction to the New Mexico AWWA Water Loss Control Training Program today. Our objective today is to explain what the training program is all about and encourage community water systems to register to attend. The New Mexico Environment Department Drinking Water Bureau receives capacity development funding from the EPA, which funds direct assistance and training to public water systems in the state. The Sustainable Water Infrastructure Group, we call it SWIG, implements the capacity development program and is funding this AWWA training program. Through the SWIG assessment of public water system capacity, we find information that shows that water systems across the state are struggling with aging and failing infrastructure, aquifer depletion when operators are seeing their production levels drop or their wells go dry. Systems are also struggling with unexpected climate change impacts such as years of drought and wildfire and watersheds throughout the state. These current difficult conditions in our state limit the amount of drinking water that is available and increase the cost of production by requiring infrastructure replacement or repair. When we talk about different uses of water, drinking water is one of the most valuable. Safe drinking water most importantly protects public health, but the drinking water infrastructure that a public water system builds also provides fire protection to homes within a community, allows for the economic development of local businesses, and in general improves the quality of life for the community. These are all extremely valuable uses of water to New Mexico's community members. SWEET chose to focus on funding a water loss control training this year because of the significant benefits it can provide to water systems across the state. Training water systems to have more information and understanding on how the condition of their assets relate to their revenues they collect will significantly increase the system's ability to make cost-effective decisions on asset repair and infrastructure projects, as well as provide an opportunity to maximize the system's revenue. SWEET chose the AWWA method for the state's program because it is very credible and it's already utilized by state agencies in New Mexico, as well as across the country. This program will also provide the opportunities for multiple stakeholders to be involved, including public water systems, state agencies, and assistance providers to have training in the same method so that communication is improved because everyone's speaking the same language across the state. Ultimately, we hope to see all water systems in the state understand what the water loss data at their system means and be able to plan to minimize it. Why should you attend this program? Any systems that are interested in seeking state funding, interested in seeking water rights, using practices to improve revenue and reduce their costs, provide additional water supply. These are all reasons why systems should attend this program and training session. We will be offering operator and board training credits as well, and the entire program is free. Who should attend? We would like to see multiple attendees from each water system if possible, because there is an interaction of technical, financial, and managerial functions within the water loss program. It's better if operations, finance, and management can all attend. And now I'm going to pass it on to Will to talk about the content.
Very good. Thank you, Danielle. Now we are switching slide control there. And James, let me know if I'm coming through.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay, very good. So thank you, Danielle, for that setup, and we will be talking about today not only what's involved in the program, but ultimately at the end of this webcast, you walk away with a clear understanding of the compelling reasons why you should sign up and the benefits for participating in the program. So what we're going to now do is to look at some of the technical elements that will be covered. This is going to be covered in a series of workshops. A little bit later in the webcast, we'll learn about the logistics of when and where those will be taking place. But for the moment, we're going to focus on the what, and focus on what we'll be talking about. And it's designed to be into 4 segments. The first segment is looking at the foundations of doing water loss accounting. The second segment is looking at how we assess the reliability of that data that we have in our water loss accounting and water auditing process, and that's called data validation. The third segment is once we have audited and we have assessed how valid that information is, what do we then do? How do we analyze that information to feed into the fourth segment, which is developing strategy? And at the end of the day, we want our measures that we take to be effective and to be cost effective. And that's why we want to follow this regimented process rather than just going right out the door and implementing something without having the analysis behind it, so that we're ensuring the maximum chance for success and the best investment and use of those resources, time and money. So I want to take just a few minutes here and go through what some of those technical concepts are. We'll spend our time mostly today on the foundations, and I'll touch on the other 3 segments that we're going to take a deep dive into for the 4 workshop series. But we start with the basic concepts within the foundation, and those basic concepts go like this. We utilize the water balance. In doing that, we're able to identify total water loss within the system, but then take that total water loss and separate it into its 2 primary components, real and apparent. And we're going to define and understand what these words mean in a moment, but following this line of thought and logic process. After step 2, we take the real and apparent loss components, and we repeat that step. We break those down into their respective parts. We refer to those as subcomponents. And then we assess each of those subcomponents in terms of their volumes and values with an understanding of how valid those metrics are. So those are kind of our guiding concepts, and I set that up because those will be recurring themes as we go through the process. Step 1 of utilizing the water balance. This is something that is provided to us by AWWA, actually adapted from practices across the world. AWWA adopted the water balance approach in 2003, about 12 years ago, recognizing it across the globe. This is the best way, international best practice for conducting water loss accounting. And in doing that, we're able to focus in on this concept of non-revenue water. And we do that by understanding all the water supplied in the system, of making adjustments for any errors that may exist in how we measure those figures. And we understand that those the supply breaks down into authorized consumption and water loss. So it's either having one of these 2 buckets. And through the course of categorizing the different types of authorized consumption and water loss, we can then dial in on non-revenue water. And the non-revenue water is the component or the elements of water that put into our system that simply do not return revenues to the utility. It's made up of 3 primary components. The top is our unbilled authorized consumption. This is water that is authorized for use, not typically billed. Every system has it. Every system has to fight fires. Every system typically has to flush, those types of things. And then we have these other 2 categories, real and apparent loss. Real loss, I'll go to the bottom here. Real loss, this is leakage. This is the type of loss that we are used to associating with. Well, we've got this other type of loss called apparent loss, which is a non-physical loss, but it exerts an economic impact on the utility. And these are your slow meters, unbilled or underbilled customers, and theft. And it ends up hitting you at the retail rate, whereas leakage hits you at the wholesale rate. And therein lies a key difference and a key reason why we want to segregate our loss into these 2 pieces. We have to understand how much is leakage versus how much of these other types, because we've got a major difference in how those cost impacts are hitting us. The other key reason why we have to separate them is that the tools for managing them are quite different. So we want to make sure we're putting the right tool to the job, and that's how we do it. We follow this water balance approach, break water loss into its real and apparent categories. How do we do that? We have a standardized form and format provided by AWWA in form of the free water audit software. And this is a tool that we'll be learning about and using in this training program. It's something that was designed to be accessible, easy to use, and to provide the industry with the same sheet of music from which to sing. And I think it's now in its 5th generation. It's been out for about 10 years, so it's had some time to work through improvements in user interface and user friendliness. But overall, it's a very easy tool to take and in a very short amount of time do your first top-down water audit. If you've never done it before, and if you've been at it a while, it's also an effective format to use to continue to conduct an annual water balance. One of the very unique features about this format and the tool that was developed by AWWA is it has a scoring mechanism that's built into it that allows us to assess how valid our inputs are. And the way the scoring mechanism works is that each input as a 1 through 10 criteria to assess, is it a low, a mid, or a high degree of confidence on that particular input. Not all data is perfect. In fact, very little data is ever perfect all the time. And this allows us to qualitatively assess how reliable or not reliable that particular input is. And it ends up giving a very helpful context to where I sit today. So as each of these inputs is put into the audit, it is then assessed a score of 1 to 10, and then a total composite score is then put back at you as the auditor from this format. Out of that total score, I'm now looking at the data validity matrix. We can understand where do we fall on the spectrum of total data validity. And if we are on the lower portion of the spectrum, we can know that it is too early to take part in some activities, like setting targets, benchmarking, and comparing myself against others, and things like that. But if I'm higher on the spectrum of data validity, I've got guidance on what I should be focusing on next. And really, if I've already got a reasonably high level of validity in my information, I can focus most of my efforts on reducing water loss in the system. If I start out and I'm low on the spectrum, it is too early to start to try to reduce leakage and reduce apparent losses in the system. I need to first make improvements in my data so that I can have a clearer understanding of what the real volumes and values of loss look like in my system. So this is a purposeful and helpful tool that's built into the auditing process, is to assess that validity. So that's how we get to the 3 V's: validity, volumes, and values. And that validity is the biggest gear in this graphic, because it is the first one that we need to evaluate, because until we reach an acceptable level of validity, the volumes and the values that are spit back out or that are provided back from the audit do not have meaning. They may not be meaningful yet. So I'm going to now pivot. I'm going to do a quick sound check. James, let me know how I'm coming through right now, if you don't mind.
All good.
All right, excellent. Thank you. So how do we take those volumes and values and assess them on the different components of non-revenue water? Well, here we have it at the highest level, the 3 primary components of non-revenue water, which are real loss, apparent loss, and any authorized but unbilled consumption we have in our system. And what we see many times, and this is a very common profile, the volumes of real loss are the largest component by volume, or the real loss is the largest component by volume in my non-revenue water. And on the value, it's actually flipped, and the apparent loss is the greatest cost impact. And that makes sense, because our apparent losses are exerting themselves at the retail rate. In systems that produce their own water, this is a typical relationship. In systems that purchase water, this is not necessarily the way that this may shake out, because if we are purchasing water, then the leakage, the cost of leakage in our system is actually more expensive, because it's costing us at whatever it cost us to buy that water. So from here, we take this analysis, and if you'll remember back to our guiding concepts, 1, 2, 3, 4, we can utilize the water balance. We break water down into, or water loss into its primary components, real and apparent. And our guiding concept number 3 is to then take one more step and break real and apparent down into its respective subcomponents. Because not all leakage is the same, and not all apparent loss is the same. And we need to have an understanding at enough granularity and enough detail that we can really apply the right tool to the job. And that's where we get into this type of relationship, where we can see, okay, out of my apparent losses, I know that's made up of slow meters, theft, and data handling issues. What is exerting the largest cost impact out of those different components? And once we have it at this level of detail, then we can begin to formulate a plan. We can begin to develop a strategy. We can begin to gain a sense of priority. Where should I focus my attentions earlier versus later? and those types of things. So that's really where we're getting into the component analysis, which is the third segment of the training content before we get to the fourth segment, which is developing a strategy. Circling back to our basic concepts, we utilize the water balance to understand how our total water loss breaks down into real and apparent. We follow that line of thinking even further to break our real and apparent losses into their respective subcomponents. We evaluate those in terms of volumes and values after we have satisfied that there is enough validity in the information. And that's when we are setting ourselves up to develop a strategy and inform our water loss control program. And that really gets us back to the design and the layout of the technical content for this training program. Is we begin by understanding how to prepare an audit to begin with. Once we've done that, how do we assess how valid that audit is? When we have determined our level of validity, how do we analyze the data? How do we break it down into its respective parts and understand those components and then inform a strategy that is going to be effective for controlling water loss at its different components? So that's a flyover of the things that we'll be covering from a technical perspective in this training program. It's designed to be building in nature. Each circuit, each workshop builds from one to the next, and that's what we're going to learn about in the final segment today. I'm going to, in a moment, I'm going to pass it back to Heather to talk about how these workshops connect with each other, where and when they'll be, and a little bit on the program logistics. So Heather, if you will, take it away.
Great, thank you, Will. What I want to talk about is a little bit about the logistics, a little bit about what you'll experience when you come to the training. And just as a reminder, if you have any questions for anything that's been covered thus far or anything I'm going to talk about, please type your questions in the chat box and we'll get to them at the end. I wanted to mention that we have two different training programs that we'll be offering. One is a small systems training program, and by small we mean systems less than 10,000 in population or serving less than 10,000 people. And our large system training program, which will be anybody who's serving more than 10,000 people. Our small system training program is going to include this introductory webinar and then training sessions 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we'll finish up with a final webinar after that. Our meeting topics are going to be water audit foundations. So the first meeting will be a full day meeting. And it will cover water audit foundations. Will went over kind of the basics of the AWWA water audit method, and we're going to talk about that in more detail in meeting number 1. Meeting number 2 is going to focus on data validation. Meeting number 3, and the data validation part is what Will was describing, where we're trying to assess the quality of the data and how good the information is that we're putting into the water balance. Meeting number 3 is a component and economic analysis where we'll get into the components that make up the water loss. And then meeting number 4 is dealing with real and apparent loss control strategies. So by the time we get to meeting number 4, we're going to be describing what you can do to address the various components of the non-revenue water. The large system training program is going to be a little shorter. We're going to start with an introductory webinar, and then there's going to be a training session 1 and only a training session 2, followed by a final webinar. So for the large systems, we're going to cover the water audit foundations and data validation in meeting number 1, and then talk about the strategies and the components in meeting number 2. So that'll just be a 2-part training session. In both cases, the individual meetings that we hold will follow a pattern. We'll have presentations on the various water loss topics that will be covered in each of the meetings. And then we'll have some activities during the meetings so that people will get to try things out and work with the information, work with their peers, so there'll be a peer-to-peer component of the meetings. And then we'll probably be asking you to do some things back at your own facility at the end of each meeting so that you can try some of this out in a real world way. And then we're going to ask you at the next meeting to come back and describe what you have done, how you've done it, any difficulties you have, so that your peers can also help you. You'll learn from each other and be able to share information that way. Between sessions, there'll be assistance available via phone or in person. If we have issues that are of a nature where it really needs to be an in-person visit, we'll be doing it that way. If there are things that we can handle via phone or email, we'll address the issues that way. So between sessions, you won't be left alone. There will be help and assistance to help you get through those activities or answer any questions that you may have based on the training program. So what might we be expecting of participants who want to do the training process? We would like to have the same 1 or 2 people attend all the meetings so that there's consistency between the beginning and the end of the program. You are welcome to bring others to individual meetings, especially people that may have a greater interest or a greater role in particular pieces of water loss. So you may bring an extra person to a particular meeting here and there, but we really want 1 or 2 people to attend all of the meetings from the utility so they'll be able to hear the whole program from start to finish. We want participants who are willing to do the water loss applied activities, so those things that we ask you to do back at your utility, we would really like you to be willing to take that on, be willing to give it a try. And you don't have to worry about what the results are. It's about just attempting it. We're there to help you and help you apply those things, but we'd really like you to be willing to do that. We'd like you to be willing to present your results to your peers, and it does not have to be in any kind of formal setting. It's just sharing verbally, what you've done and what happened at your facility. We'd like you to keep an open mind. You may be going into this with preconceived notions about what you think the results are going to be, or maybe you've heard a little bit about water loss before. And so we really want you to just keep an open mind to hearing maybe a new way of doing things or thinking about something. So when you come, just be ready to listen and learn, which is the last thing. We just want you to be willing to learn new things and participate that way. So the training approach that we're talking about has been used in many settings, and we ourselves here at the EFC have used it many different times in different ways. And what's good about it is that it shows the trainees how to apply the learning to their utility. So you're not just hearing a message, you're actually getting an opportunity to apply it to your own facility. And there's also a group dynamic, so it allows you to get and share information from your peers. And that's really a very valuable way to learn, is to talk to each other and learn from each other's experience. And it'll be building a network of support. So once you've gone through this training session, you will have worked with many of your peer water utilities, and you'll be able to work with them in the future as well as you're all going through this water loss together, because unfortunately water loss is not a once and done activity. It's a long-term commitment to looking at things on an annual basis and making changes as you need over time. So you're going to be doing this long after the training sessions are over, and this network of support will help you through that process because your peers will be doing the same things. If there's any questions, comments, concerns, we have some email addresses and phone numbers on the screen. You can feel free to contact us at any time. And if you have any questions now, feel free to type them in the chat box. Other than that, our formal presentation has concluded. We'll see if we have any questions that we can answer. We do have a couple questions. We're just digging them out. Oh, we didn't do our poll question. Okay, one question we have, which I think I might throw back to Will, but I can give a partial answer, and I'm going to let Will answer some more, is does the training help water systems to increase data validity? And I think the question there, or the answer there, is a resounding yes. We will talk about strategies that can be used to help increase the data validity. We'll talk about issues that might be causing you to have a lower score. We'll talk about ways in which that can be increased. And then I will, like I said, I'll open that question up to Will as well to see if you want to add to that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Heather. I would agree. It's a resounding yes. And the second segment out of the 4, remember the first one is foundations. The second segment and the second workshop is data validation. In that, we're going to be learning about not only how to assess where you are today, but what are all the things that contribute to higher reliability in every input, and which inputs are more important than others, and where are some low-hanging fruit with respect to data validation. If you're already at a higher point on the scale, and you've already captured all the low-hanging fruit, even then, what can you do? What are some higher-level things that you can do to incrementally improve that data validity? So it is absolutely built into what we're going to be learning in the training program, and participating in the training program will help you understand how to improve your data validity.
Great. Another question we have is the timeline to complete the workshops will be extremely difficult for small systems to take an entire week from other commitments. What I want to explain is the workshops are only one day during that week. We actually have, and this is something I should have mentioned earlier, we actually have 3 different locations where workshops will take place for the small utilities, and that will be Albuquerque, Espanola, and Las Cruces. And then we have, for the large utilities, 1 location, which will be Albuquerque. So for the 4 training sessions, it's only a 1-day commitment for each of those trainings. So we will be training all week because we have multiple places that we're going to train, but it will only be a commitment of 1 day during that week for each of the utilities. So the commitment will not be will not be a whole week for utilities. So you'll come to a 1-day meeting, and then you'll be asked to do an activity, and you'll have a couple of months in which to get it done, and you'll have people who will be able to assist you in completing that completing that activity. So we want to just make clear that the commitment's not quite what it appears to be on the website. We just wanted to show the week in which the trainings will occur, and that's what you see up on the website. And there was a question sort of related to this that said, is the schedule of seminars posted? And the answer is yes. On the website, do you remember off the top of your head what the website is?
Yeah, it's Southwest EFC.
If you go to the next slide.
Yeah, it's on the next slide. We'll show you the
Oh, there it is. Sorry. Yeah. So if you look at the bottom there, you'll see the web address, and that's where you can see the dates, the weeks. We're currently working out now the specific days that we will be training in each location. So that's a little bit fluid due to travel arrangements and room arrangements and that kind of thing, but we'll be posting the actual days for the first set of seminars very soon, and then we'll post the other ones. So if you go to that website, which is where you probably went to register, there is information. Somebody asked if they were already registered, do they need to register again? And the answer to that is no. If you've registered once, we have you covered. And there was one that said how soon we have the training session date scheduled. We have the weeks picked out. The days for the first session will be picked very soon. And then based on a couple of things we need to work out for the first round of trainings, we'll then put the rest of the training schedule up there. We do have one poll question actually we would like to put out there. It turns out that the week we picked includes the Veterans Day holiday, and because neither Will nor I get that day off, we weren't focused on the fact that that could be a holiday for some of you all who are attending the session. So we wanted to put a poll question up to see if you're going to be able to attend that day. So please take a moment if you're on the webinar just to answer the question on the poll, which will help us decide if we need to reschedule that training day or if that will work out. And for the first session, if it turns out that that day doesn't work for you and you're able to attend, you know, one of the other sessions during the first week, you know, we might be able to accommodate some people that way, but we want to try to accommodate as many as we can. So if you can just take a moment and let us know whether that's going to be a problem for you so that we can make adjustments to the schedule if we need to. And while people are taking that poll, I'll answer another question. There was a question that came in about a very, very small system that has very few people that work at the utility, and one person would be able to attend 2 of the sessions but may not be able to attend another 2 sessions, and how might they handle that? I would say we'll work with you individually to work out that kind of arrangement to see what can be done for the really, really small utilities that just don't have a lot of staff and very limited ability to get away from their water utility. So again, we want to have as many people as possible participate in the program, and we will work with you to work through those issues and make sure that, you know, you can attend the training if you would like to. One question asked, can we change from the small system training to the large system training? The way I answer that question, and I'll let Will weigh into this as well, the small system training is designed to provide more information, more in-depth training, and if you are a small utility, we would prefer that you would go through that track because you will get more information in a setting that will be more geared to the small utilities. If there's a compelling reason to have you change, we could work with you individually to see, you know, if the small system or the large system track would be better for you. But if it is a system like right around the 10,000 person range, then we might want to look at you individually to see which one would be better for you and maybe see how much water loss practice you've already had. One of the differences with the large utilities is we expect that there's a little bit more already occurring, so the training will probably move a little bit faster than the small system training, which is why we would like folks who haven't done as much in this area to be on the small system track. But we could get with you individually to see if it makes sense to move you. Will, do you want to weigh in on that question as well?
I would just echo what you said, Heather. I would encourage you to go ahead and get registered, and then reach out to us, and we'll just work with you on it. I think that's probably the best approach.
Somebody just asked if we'll be emailing training day dates, or do they need to go to the web? We will also be emailing those out to anybody who has registered for the program. So if you have already registered, we will be emailing information to you. We'll look at the poll now. We can close the poll, I think.
Sure.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and share the poll results. Let's see. So it looks like, would you be able to attend about 30, is that 30%?
30%.
About 30% could, 43% could not, and 27% it's a maybe. So we'll take a look at that, take that into consideration, and see if we need to make an adjustment in the training program before we get the dates out to you. So that's something internally we'll take a look at. We thank you very much for taking the time to take that poll to let us know whether that would be a difficult time for you to be able to come to training. Are there any more questions that anybody has? If you do, please type them into the chat box now. Okay, it doesn't look like I'm seeing any additional questions. I'll just open it up to either Will or Danielle before we wrap up. Is there anything else that either of you would like to say before we close out the webinar?
I don't think so. Thanks, Heather.
Will?
This is Peter. Heather, maybe mention any future viewers that want to look at the webinar.
Oh, yes. Just to reiterate what we mentioned at the beginning, we are recording this webinar. We know that some people were not able to attend today and there wasn't a lot of advance notice, so it may not have fit into everybody's schedule. Or maybe there's somebody else from your utility that you would like to view this webinar. We will be putting the recording up where people can access it. We'll let you know where that is, and you're free to let anybody else know about the webinar. We'll be sending it to, a wide group so that people will know the webinar is there. They can watch it and listen to it at a later date. And again, if you want to share it with, board members or your boss or another operator or whoever, please feel free to do so. Will, do you have any final thoughts?
Just a couple final thoughts I wanted to wrap with. One is 2 actions from today's webcast as we're getting logged off and getting back to the all the emails that have probably popped in while you've been on this webcast. Go to the website this afternoon while it's fresh on your mind. If you have not yet, go ahead and register. And then the other action is to spread the word. Help us to make sure that that all systems in New Mexico are aware of this training. We are making a very concerted effort to spread that word on our end, but the more folks that we can have involved to tell your peers, to other water systems that this is available, it's free. There's lots of very, very good reasons to sign up. So just pass the word along and make sure they are aware that the registration deadline is the end of next week, which is the 30th.
The question just popped in. If we register for the webinar, we also register for the classes. If you completed the information below the webinar, we kind of had a 2-part registration where you had a chance to say, if you wanted to register for the small or large system training. If you did that, you are already registered and you do not need to register again. If you check no that you didn't want to register, then please go back and register for the training. But there was that opportunity as you registered for the webinar that you could go ahead and register for the training right at the same time. If you did that, you're already on the list and you're good to go. One couple just final thoughts for me before we wrap up today. I just wanted to mention that sometimes when you see the water balance picture, it looks a little scary, it looks a little intimidating, but when you actually go through putting the data in the system, it's nowhere near as bad as it might first appear when you see the big, scary looking water loss chart. So don't be intimidated and don't be afraid to try it, because entering the data into the AWWA software is a whole lot easier. It's important to know the components of the water loss balance and kind of get the full picture, but when you actually go to enter the data into the computer, it's really not that bad. AWWA has designed a really nice piece of software that's pretty easy to use, so don't let it concern you when you see the water balance. Don't feel afraid that it will be too difficult to do that. And water loss is such an important issue that we really feel very strongly that this is something that all water utilities in the state need. It doesn't matter what kind of size or pipe or what you're doing, your source, whether you buy water or have your own source. It's really an important topic for everybody. We did have another question come in. Why are we not doing the classes via webinar? And the biggest reason we're not doing it that way is it's really important to have hands-on opportunities to do the work and to be face-to-face with trainers and your peers. And it's very difficult to do this kind of course remotely and really get everybody to understand. We have actually done some webinars as the Southwest Environmental Finance Center. I can send you a link to some webinars that we've done in water loss, and we've done some training that way. But this kind of training to really fully understand the water loss, to know how to do the entry into the program, to understand what the results mean, to do the data validation, all that sort of thing. It's very, very difficult to do that kind of training and really have you understand how it works without being face-to-face, in person, in a classroom. And I don't know if Danielle or Will, if you want to add anything to that, but we feel very strongly that this really needs to be an in-person chance to do peer-to-peer learning and interact with trainers who can help you, understand the process and understand how to use the tools.
This is Will. I would just add on that the training program was designed and modeled after some very successful programs in other states. And part of what made those other state programs so successful was the hands-on nature of it and the cumulative nature of it, where what you do in the first exchange or the first workshop circuit builds with an activity in between to the second, which builds with an activity in between to the third, and this interactive and putting your hands on it type of nature of the work just can't be accomplished with a web interface. So that's the only thing I would add.
And another question came in about whether training sessions were given. We will have training sessions, training credits for the class. You had a chance when you registered to enter your operator number if you wanted training credits. If you didn't do that, there will still be other opportunities for you to provide that information to us. But we will be giving out CEUs for operators who attend the class. And then if you're a board member who attends, and you need to get continuing education credits for being a board member, that is also available. This isn't the mandatory 12-hour training, but it could count towards your continuing ed training as a board member. So, either way, there could be operator credits or board member credits. And in terms of how many credits, that's something that we'll be working with the state, the folks who run the operator certification program to determine how many credits each class is worth. In general, it's going to be about, in an 8-hour training day, it's typically about 6 hours, give or take, that qualify for the actual training credits, but we'll work with the state and let you know how many credits will be granted for each of the training classes. Unless Danielle or Peter, if you have an answer already, but I think that'll go through the OpCert unless either of you have an answer already.
We don't have an answer yet. We'd have to take each of the class agendas and sit down with the OpCert folks, and then they'll make a final determination. And we'll be collecting operator IDs at each of the classes in the sign-up sheets, and we'll be responsible for uploading those credits to the operator database, so they'll have record of attendance and the number of credits they get.
Okay, we don't see any more questions coming in. Again, if you have questions after the course, after the webinar, feel free to contact us. We're happy to answer them at a later date. And again, just thank you so much for being here today, and spread the word. Invite any other systems that you know or other people from your system to the training. We very, very much look forward to meeting everybody and working with you on this very important topic. So thank you, everybody, and we'll be stopping the broadcast.